Alrighty, it is time for Red Rain episode 155.
Ooh,
Please welcome your host, Walter Mitchell.
thank you, Kyle Little Rock Ledbetter from Sacramento. Um, Today we have a special guest, a returnee, Kevin Murray from the UK. Let's Talk Cardinals podcast from across the pond. Um, he's been champing at the bit to get back to talking about his Cardinals, and he's got a lot to offer us today. And we had a great session with him last time, so we wanted to have him back to talk about the Cameron Thomas trade. Sorry, Kyle. I mean, you actually predicted he wasn't going to make it, so not sorry on that end. But your San Diego State kid, one of the two, is gone. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about the roster and how it was constructed, and we're going to grade it, and then we're going to grade the practice squad and take it from there. So, welcome, Kevin. How are you doing? How are things in the UK?
Yeah, thanks. Well, so yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to finally be back in the swing of podcasting again. It's been quite a while. I've took a bit of a unexpected extended break, I guess you could say, which is kind of bad considering I've only just started. But that's just how life works sometimes, unfortunately. But yeah, things in the UK are great. It's sort of edging towards the end of our summer now, so the days are starting to roll in a bit. But that just means that we're another day closer to the NFL season starting. So I personally can't wait. So
Outstanding to have you back. Let's talk the Cameron Thomas trade. The Cardinals
yes,
kicked off the roster moves by trading Cameron Thomas to the Chiefs of all teams for a seventh round pick. Your take on that?
Yeah, so it was. I actually tweeted out about this. I said I think it was a bit of a surprise, and at the time, it sort of made me think two things. Was one was a case of either he was right on the bubble, and they took an opportunity to get some form of value for him before he was either waived or cut, or the second was that they had something planned. Now, the second option hasn't really come to fruition yet. We haven't really seen anything happen in terms of moves or any pieces come in yet, which to me currently is, without having to hit the big red panic button, is a massive concern. Easily our weakest part of this roster in terms of edge rushers and just pass rush in general just got a hell of a lot weaker. He had a really good preseason showing, and I think that's why it was quite a surprise to see him cut, because he had that opportunity to step up to show that he could be, a steady, reliable guy, and to see us trade him away to, like you said, the Chiefs of all teams for a seventh was very surprising, especially with those sort of late round picks. Those 6-7 round picks in the draft, they can be a complete flyer, and most of the time those players, unless you hit gold, are arguably just going to be another camp body or potentially a practice squad player. So to lose that guy who did have sort of playing experience, we know that he was a little bit out of favor with this staff since they came in, was a bit of a surprise for me. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to hit the panic button yet, because I have seen they've made a few other moves in terms of bringing in some help off the edge. But I'm personally not a massive fan of this, because I still think there was a player there in Cam Thomas. I was actually really pleased when we actually drafted him. I thought it was actually quite a nice steal when we got him. But I think looking at the value we've got for the position that we've been left in, I'm not a huge fan of this trade.
Neither am I. I wrote about it on Revenge of the Birds. I took the Dylan Thomas classic Villanelle, "Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night," to say that Cameron Thomas did not go gentle into that good night. He played his tail off in that last preseason game embarrassment over in Denver. He was one of the only bright spots in that game. He had 2 sacks. They played him virtually the entire game, him and Jesse Luketa. I mean, those guys were dragging, but they were balling the whole game. I mean, those 2 guys, more than anyone, probably are NFL ready to start the season. We'll get to that later about the decision to rest all our starters. But when he was drafted, to hear Steve Keim say, yeah, outside linebacker. It's like, again, no. I mean, look at his physical prototype. I was like, he could be Zach Allen Jr. Play him at 34 DN on the interior.
Which is always a funny thing because I always think back to I think it was the flight plan that year with that
Yeah,
draft class.
right,
And in the draft room, I think it was either the draft room or the combine, and they turned around and Steve Keim said he's a mini JJ Watt and he wears 99 for a reason.
right.
And then they moved him outside.
Right. Then he's saying outside 34 outside linebacker, which had to screw with his head right from the start. I don't know why the Cardinals keep taking college kids and putting them in positions where they're, not only assimilating to the NFL, but playing, in a position they haven't ever played before. And so that was mind boggling there. I thought he had a really good rookie year. I thought he flashed. He had 3 sacks. Um, Loved the film on him with J.J. Watt on HBO Hard Knocks. J.J. took to him really well, I thought, and vice versa. There's a lot of upside there. He's a kid that, he said it was hard for him to adjust to a new system in year 2, where typically players, make the big leap. And I think there was a lot of confusion, as to who's playing where last year and who's making the team. And for whatever reason, he just didn't click last year. But man, if he's going to show you what he's got, how could he do more than what he did in this preseason? I mean, he rose to the occasion. He played hard. He never quits on a play. He plays to the whistle. He's got a really strong body. He's a bull rusher. And here's my question, Kevin. Name me a pass rusher that we're keeping other than the speed guys, Gardeck and Xavier Thomas, who's a better bull rusher than Cameron Thomas.
It's a good question because, like I said, there's so many holes on this pass rush that
Right.
you can argue that we do have a player like that. I mean, if anything, you're going to be looking at just your nose tackles providing that sort of ball rush, and it's just this is what I struggle to understand with this. Is the case if you know that you already lost your first round pick to the IR. So you're going to be that body short who can
Right.
do that sort of, those sort of plays, the strong arm ball rushes, and he's probably arguably the most like in terms of build as well. So it's a big question mark for me. As much as I love Gardeck and I really like what I've seen from Xavier Thomas as well. So far, I just feel that we're going to be going into week 1 exactly the same position or situation that we were in the last season, and that is without an improved front 7.
Yeah. And, he had 2 years left on his rookie deal. I mean, this is a young player just starting to get going, and I don't understand it. Also, he has that versatility where you can kick him inside to rush inside, which today is in vogue. You want athletes who can get off blocks to tackle a scrambling quarterback from the interior. I mean, you can't have guys in cement boots anymore where quarterbacks are just going to run right past them. He had that versatility as an asset as well. It's just mind-boggling to me how the coaches couldn't see that in him or bring it more out of him or whatever the scenario was. I mean, it seemed like they were, just sort of resigned to shopping him from the start. And, I was really impressed with the effort he put in. But now, for his sake, imagine him now, how he's going to feel what Steve Spagnuolo, Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator, who's great in developing players. I mean, he's won the last 2 seasons with a host of first and second year draft picks on that team. Turned Trent McDuffie, for example, into an all-pro in 2 years. So, and other guys really stepped up. Love the kid George Karlaftis on one edge. So Cam will be splitting time with Mike Dana on the other side. And what Spags loves to do from that other side has kicked Dana inside, and now he'll kick Thomas inside. Can you imagine what it's going to be like for Cameron Thomas to look over next to him, and he's next to Chris Jones, rushing from the inside, who's going to get triple teamed? I mean, I'm thrilled for him that he lands in a scenario like that. I'm just so miffed at the Cardinals as to why they screwed this up, in my opinion, with a bright young talent. So before
Well,
we get our grades, let me get Kyle's take.
Yeah, we had the same conversation last year with Isaiah Simmons, right? It was you can't take first round guys and 3 years later flip them into fifths, or take Jones and flip them into sixth round picks or pick swaps years later. So having a third round pick 2 years later get flipped into a seventh round pick is the definition of losing value. And we've been having the same conversation for 2 off seasons now.
Yeah. So, Kevin, what's your grade on this trade?
Like I said, I'm not a fan, and I don't want to, like I said, seem that it's going to be a panic, because they must see something in the unit that we've got, or have hope that, it's very hard to see as well, because we haven't really seen our first unit out there. So we don't know what we're going to be expecting from this team yet. So it's very difficult to grade that. But given the position, from my thought, in a sense of the versatility of the player, knowing that you've already got Darius Robinson going to the IR, so you've lost a body there already in an already very weak room. I'm going to give this, I'm going to be quite generous. I think I'm going to give this a C.
Okay. Kyle?
Yeah, I would go with like a C plus, but I guess I would have the right to reserve my grade based on how the season goes, because if they looked at the roster and said, we think LJ Collier is just a better player than Cameron Thomas, regardless of developmental project or whatever, and Thomas was already going to go to the practice squad anyways, then I think it's fine to flip him for a seventh round pick if he wasn't going to be a part of your future. But a seventh round pick, like Kevin said, is like there's a 50% chance they ever make a roster or make a start for the team that you're playing for. But it's just resetting the clock. If it's resetting the clock on the contract, essentially, by making the trade. So I'd call it like a C plus. And then, if Collier ends up having a successful season, then maybe you feel a little different about it. But even Collier himself is on a 1-year contract. So yeah, about a C plus, but it give or take a letter grade based on how the season plays out.
Yeah, well, and Collier's not playing the edge. He's playing nose tackle and defensive interior. Based on the fact that, well, people said when the trade came down that, well, they have to have another move in mind. Kevin alluded to that. They did bring in Julian Aquara to the practice squad. He looks like a fine young talent. He's bounced around a little bit. He was waived by the Eagles after a pretty solid preseason. So, and but that's not the kind of move I guess people, well, certainly that I was thinking of, if seen as I thought there were someone off waivers they really would like, or would make a trade for. I suggested on Twitter that they look at those Broncos edges, because they're deep now after they signed Jonah Ellis. I mean, they drafted Jonah Ellis. They've got Browning on there. They've got Bonita, who played well against us in the first quarter. They got a host of edge rushers there. I thought they could get one of them for something, but no move has been made. So in light of that, I mean, I don't know if something's still cooking the next couple of days. Jonathan Gannon said that two things. He said, we won't know for sure. The dust will settle next week, when on Monday, when we see who's on the field. Okay, so maybe more things are happening. But he also said to the Arizona media that he really likes the group that he's got on the edge. And he said, he even conceded, I know you don't probably think that to the media, like you don't, but what I see is, I really like. So, you know, I applaud Kevin for being judicious and saying like we haven't seen the starters yet, and but on paper, I mean, I cannot get off of this. The seventh rounder means very little to me. So, and the fact that Andy Reid and you know um, Spagnola want Cameron Thomas more than our guys really pisses me off. So I'm going to give it an F. Um, Unless we see something later, I'll revise it. But this one was really shocking and disappointing to me. So um, people would argue, oh, a back end of the roster guy. I don't think this is a back end of the roster guy. And in fact, I think he steps in KC. He'll be right behind Mike Dana. And I think he's going to get some good run. And they run a four-man front. And that's his best spot is edge on a four-man, not edge on a five-man. So I think it's a great fit for him. I'm disappointed in how it was handled here. So that's that. Let's go to the roster. All right. There's lots to talk about there. If we can put up that graphic, Kyle, we'll go down position by position. All right. So, quarterback situation. Your take, Kevin.
I think this is alluded to the preseason all along, but I still don't think that we have our quarterback two on the roster.
Okay.
I think Clayton Tune obviously clearly beat out Desmond Ridder in preseason from what we saw. That was very, very clear. For whatever reason, I don't think Ridder could get a grasp of this offense, and I think Clayton Tune has sort of improved from last year. But I still think that there's a lot of improvement there to be made at that position. I like how he's sort of taking command, and you can see that growth in him this year compared to last season. But if you could honestly say, could you trust Clayton Tune to go into the season, say if Kyler got injured and perform? It's another question. So I'm not surprised we've only decided to take two after seeing what we've seen in preseason. But from what I've seen on the roster, I think Tune clearly won that battle over Desmond Ridder.
Yeah. How about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I think this was as perfect as they were going to get it right now. I know a lot of teams only kept two and passed people through to the practice squad. I know some people were talking about Dorian Thompson Robinson trades and things like that, but I think the two that they kept while also passing Ridder through to the practice squad was as good as they were going to get it. So call it an A, call it an A plus, whatever you want to call it. This was the perfect scenario for the Cardinals, was to be able to keep two and then not have to go sign a third emergency quarterback. I know, Walter, you talked about Jeff Driscoll last week as a
Right.
possible plug and play option for a third quarterback, but they passed Ridder through to the practice squad, and so I think they're in really good shape.
I know I have a higher opinion of Clayton Tune than most people. I have from the beginning. I watched a lot of his college tapes. Was really thrilled after watching the tapes because in this system, when you have a quarterback like him and where his clear strength is passing over the middle, and he's very accurate throwing over the middle. He's the best I've seen in throwing over the middle in 2 years. So in this system. So, and when you run a lot of, heavy a running scheme with off play action, and you're going to hit the, pick on the linebackers and throw in between the linebackers and safeties. This kid has that part of his game down. He's got, and plus we saw him scramble and make that great off schedule throw to Xavier Weaver. I thought in that game he made all the throws you need to see from an NFL quarterback. The third down conversion to Weaver on the out pass was a frozen rope right on the money. That's an NFL throw. And what I was disappointed in all the way through preseason was the coaches just kept mixing and matching various linemen There was no cohesion, very little cohesion on the units that they threw in front of these guys. In every game coming out immediately upon dropping back, there was guys in his face, in Tune's face, and in Desmond Ritter's face in that first game. I mean, Elijah Wilkinson is not an NFL tackle, yet they kept putting him out there and putting him out there. And first play of the game, he gets roller skated, and it was a swinging gate, and a guy's right in your. I don't know if you're a quarterback, what you can do more than just take a sack. Tune took 8 sacks. Ritter took 2. The good news is that in Tune's case, 8 sacks. He didn't fumble one of them. And I don't know how he could have avoided all 8 of them. I mean, I went back and watched the replay and said, when you got 2 guys right there in your face, even if you try to spin out of that, you're going to get tackled for even worse a loss. And I thought he took off pretty well sometimes. Ritter is really good at taking off. What an athlete. He was never in sync, but I don't think, either guy got a lot of favors from the way that the thing was set up with the offensive line experiments. And what I didn't understand either was two of our very best linemen who showed up and played well were Jackson Barton, way better at tackle than the guys they were starting, and Marquise Hayes was awesome. And yet every game, neither one of them, or except finally until it was the Denver game, but the first 2 games, neither one of them are in the first unit. And so you're not even putting your best guys in, the guys who are playing the best. So it was too much of an experiment for me, and with the offensive line to kind of gauge what these quarterbacks could do otherwise. But I was really impressed. I mean, after 2 games, Tune's quarterback rating was number 4 out of 29 qualifiers in the whole preseason. I mean, you look down that list, Tyler Huntley was below him after 2 games. Huntley had that great 3rd game where he came in late and threw 3 touchdown passes. But for our offense, I really like this kid. And I'm so happy for the first time in ages, maybe ever, we have 2 of our own draft picks, 1 and 2, on the depth chart. I mean, that's meaningful to me. I mean, what I was worried about last year too is I was worried about Petzing and Wolfer, Israel Wolfer, taking quick hooks off of people, getting rid of them too soon. I'm so happy they've got both these guys back in the fold. And because Ritter is way better than what we saw. I've seen a lot of him too. He's new system. Right now his head's spinning too fast. But as an athlete, he's fantastic. He's a tremendous competitor. He's got some couple hitches in his throwing motion that I would try to correct, and then I think that would improve his accuracy. But I'm really delighted we still have all 3, and and I like having a couple guys with size in that pocket who can throw over the middle. Although Tune is, I think, superior there right now until they fix some things with Desmond Ritter. So I'm happy about that. I'm so glad too they didn't give Cleveland a draft pick again. Oh my God. And they didn't get one for Huntley. So, and he's out there now. I don't know who he's going to go to. And the Cardinals did express some interest, but I'm imagining they didn't offer a pick. They were going to do a player for player swap. Maybe it was Michael Carter. The Browns need running backs that they offered. I think they probably offered a player for player, and the Browns said no. So, yeah, I mean, if they bring in Huntley, he's got to learn the system. I know it's similar to the Browns. It's I don't want to rush a guy back in, and I certainly would be out of my mind worried if they put Clayton Tune on waivers. Like the Houston Texans. I could see, he's highly revered in Houston. I mean, he was Tank Dell's, quarterback who threw for close to 12,000 yards at Houston, and that's a pretty dang good program. So, yeah, I'm really happy. Anxious to see how Kyler will do, particularly without any action. And but hoping he can hit the ground running day one. So I'm happy with this. I'd give this an A. The way they're developing Tune, he's getting better. They're sticking with these guys. I'm really glad they're hunkering down and sticking with them all. And Kyler has been locked in. So yeah, it's looking good to me. I mean, we can't get, backup quarterbacks aren't second round draft picks. And I think that Desmond Ritter was a third or a fourth round, and Tune was uh, uh, Mel Kiper's favorite day three quarterback 2 years ago. He was like, you know, hyping Clayton Tune in that day three mix. So that means a lot. I think, Mel's a good evaluator of quarterbacks. So, all right, let's turn to running back. The big hoopla was, and a lot of people, including myself, were pushing for Michael Carter. That didn't happen. What do you think, Kevin, about what they did keeping the four and what's happened since with being able to bring Michael Carter back?
It was surprising, especially to just trust. I think because I thought the James Conner, Michael Carter 1-2 punch was so efficient for us at the back end of last season. To obviously drop Trey Benson in, who arguably at his start looked a little bit nervous in the few touches that he got. The biggest surprise for me here is I know they signed him as a free agent, but it was to keep DJ Dallas on the active roster. And then obviously decide to cut Michael Carter because I'm extremely glad Demarcado's on there. Like you've said multiple times, Walter, he is one of the best running backs we have in pass protection. Yes. I think he's more than earned his spot on the roster. So it was a big surprise, but I also think it was a case of juggling the guaranteed salary. I think Michael Carter's got. I think I read somewhere. So I'm glad that they brought him back to the practice squad. And I'm glad he decided to resign, but it was a bit of a confusing move at the start. But I'm comfortable with that room. Like I said, the DJ Dallas, I haven't seen anything of him yet to have an opinion of him, to be honest. But he must be doing something that's impressed the coaches in order to keep him in this 53.
Yeah, he's a rugged kid. He's on these kickoffs, I think people are trying to figure out: are you better off with like a lower your shoulder guy like Dallas is? I mean, or are you better with a speedster like Weaver, who breaks one tackle and he's off to the races? Or do you need a wiggle and sizzle guy like a Michael Carter or something who can maneuver his way through traffic? I think most teams still don't have this figured out. But to have DJ Dallas is kind of a lower your shoulder guy on contact. He's a physical player. He runs hard. The fact that they have all five of them now still, A to me. I mean, the fact that they were able to pull that off. And they took a risk exposing Michael Carter to waivers, but it was that $3.2 million contract that was the elephant in the room all along with him. And I feel bad for the guy. I wrote an article on Revenge of the Birds yesterday to talk about his true value. And he earned those 3.2 million from the NFL, like incentive rules for production for first 3 years. So it's really sad that he didn't get to cash in on any of that. So he goes from that, the potential for 3.2 this year, to making, if he stays on the practice squad all year, his total salary would be $383,000, which isn't like practically almost a third of veteran salary. I mean, this is a steal for the Cardinals and sort of a bummer for Carter. But I think Carter, once there's some attrition, and there always is in running back rooms, he's a great guy to have, as we saw last year. He brings something special with that wiggle of his that the other guys don't. Benson's a north-south home run hitter who will break tackles, but he's not much of a wiggle guy. DeMarcado is a rocked up, lower the shoulder guy too, like James Conner. So Carter brings the something different that I think is really appealing. So wow, we got all five, and hopefully we'll hang on to all five all year. And I give that an A grade as well. Kyle, any thoughts from you on that room?
Yeah, I think the initial 53-man roster, picking those four kind of signifies that they're only going to rotate three backs in: Connor, Benson, and DeMarcado, and then DJ
Right,
Dallas is more of a specialist. But like you
right,
said, they can always reverse course on that decision at any point, whether it's Dallas doesn't work out the way they hoped he would in the return game, or
right.
they elect to keep Carter as a returner instead of a sixth receiver, or if there's an injury, they can always reverse course on that decision. And the other thing I'll add is that Walter wrote a very good piece on Michael Carter, like he mentioned. I read it yesterday. It's very insightful. You guys should check it out too. It's a very good story. So that's the only
Thanks,
other
Bell.
thing I'll add.
Thanks, Bell. We'll discuss your salary at the end of the show. Appreciate
My 10% of my intended salary is
it.
getting paid today, just like Carter.
All right. Yep. You're on the main roster here, buddy. We're not practice squatting you. So, all right, tight ends. Oh, this is another A group for me. I don't know about you, Kevin.
Yep, spot on.
So pleased. Go ahead. What do you got?
Well, I remember when we did our Predictor 53, and this was the four that I suggested for our tight end room. So, yeah, I'm extremely happy with this. I think that is a good mix of quality and sort of like for likeness as you could get here. I think obviously Tip Ryman was going to make this roster. Obviously, that was made abundantly clear when he was drafted, to be honest with you. But to see Travis Vokolek also make the 53 was a nice surprise for me, as I was rooting for him to make the 53. And then, of course, obviously, Trey McBride and then Elijah Higgins there, two mainstays for this roster. So I completely agree. I think that's an A-rated room right there in terms of tight ends.
Yeah, and you got everything you need there. You got the pass catchers and McBride and Higgins, the 12 and 13 type tight ends in Ryman and Vokolek. By the way, Vokolek's a really good in 13 personnel. You put him next to the tackle you're worried about. This kid blocks really well. He's long, he's strong, and he's a really good target in the red zone. He's underrated. This kid's flying under the radar. He's a really good player. And then you've got the inline blocking. McBride's worked on it. Will Hernandez said yesterday, wait till you see McBride this year. He's crushing it. Higgins is better blocker than people think, and the coaches were really thrilled last year of the progress he made. But Ryman and Vokolek in 12 and 13 personnel, plus with Ryman's ability to move around like a fullback or an H-back, you got all the options in the world with these four. And by the way, when you play a lot of 12 and 13, just so people know, you got to keep four. I mean, that part of it should not be a surprise. It just was, who would you keep as four? And Vokolek had the best of the preseason. Plus, he was really good for us, filling in last year for Jeff Swaim once he went down. He's perfect for that role that Jeff Swaim was playing. So, yeah, okay. So now the wide receiver room. MHJ, Dorchy, Michael Willie, Chris Moore sticks. He had a really good scrimmage against the Colts. I think
He did, yeah.
that cemented his deal. And he averaged 21 yards per catch last year, which, wow. And had close to 500 yards. So he's got deep threat ability. Zach Pascal for his special teams. Um, you know, I thought he handled himself really well this preseason. I think for someone who clearly was on the bubble, he got some stuff done. But then our really super sleeper Xavier Weaver, who was one of the real bright spots of the preseason. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, it's nice to see sort of an undrafted rookie sort of make you 53. It's kind of exciting. It's like that's not that sort of thing doesn't really often happen to the Cardinals. So um, I think yeah, he's again one earned it. You know, he's flashed in places. He can show his speed. His the catch he made, like you said on the Clayton Tune rollout against Denver was
Right.
fantastic. But yeah, it's a nice mix. But Marvin Harrison Jr., Greg Dortch, and Michael Wilson does get me excited, and I can't wait to see this on the first week. But obviously, it's a shame about what's happened with Zay Jones because apparently he was also doing very well in camp and had a very good showing in camp. So to see him suspended for the first 5 games, I think it is.
Right. Yeah.
It's a real knock, but at the same time, I think that's a fantastic opportunity to obviously open up that roster spot for Xavier Weaver. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do, and obviously potentially acting as a return man on these kickoffs as well. Like you said, I think it's going to take a little bit
Right.
of time to figure that out, and yeah, I think that's a great opportunity for him to stick around and become obviously that almost special teams ace as well. So I think that's a
Right.
really solid group. I think that's a good mix of amazing talent. Loved what I saw from Michael Wilson last year. Greg Dortch is just Greg Dortch. He's phenomenal. And then obviously adding Marvin Harrison Jr., I think that's a really good mix of young talent in that receiving core. And obviously seeing how much receivers are costing now, I think that's really good to
Yeah.
see two really good solid rookies on their rookie contracts in the most expensive room in football at the moment currently. You could
Right.
argue. So yeah, I think it's a really solid group, and I'm really pleased with that.
Yeah. Kyle.
Yeah, this has been our first chance to talk about the Zay Jones suspension here, and obviously beyond the domestic violence case of itself. Like, I think him getting suspended is the reason why Zach Pascal is still on the roster at this point. I think he would have probably been the one on the bubble more than Xavier Weaver because of what Weaver was bringing on the special teams. And Walter, like you said, Pascal has kind of been cordial and professional while also being on the roster for someone who's been around the block for, I think,
Right.
what is it, 4 different
7
teams now at
years.
this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think Pascal is on the team because of the suspension at this point, and maybe that will adjust once we get to week 6 again. I don't know how they are planning to reintegrate Zay Jones back into the team after the suspension, but I think the reason the roster looks the way it does is because of that suspension. Pascal probably would have been claimed by another team or open to waivers potentially. But the other thing that I think was interesting is the people they were able to keep on the practice squad,
Yeah.
specifically Bachelia being able to stick around. I thought that was very interesting because all of their developmental projects. I know, Walter, you had Chisena on your original 53-man prediction, and I felt like exposing him to waivers wouldn't be as dangerous in terms of being claimed by another team, but they kept Bachelia, they kept Palmer, who's been a developmental project since the beginning, and they kept Dan Chisena on the practice squad, which I think is awesome for the Cardinals, that all three of their quote unquote developmental project players and people who showed out in the preseason all made it to the practice squad and didn't get claimed by another team. So when you take the group as a whole, being the 6 who made the roster plus the 3 on the practice squad, I think this was a big win for the Cardinals in this fact that they didn't have to bring in someone else from outside the group that was already there and were able to keep Bachelia, Palmer, and Chisena on the practice squad.
Yeah. About Zay Jones, I didn't like the signing from the beginning. Um, because I didn't want him taking snaps, practice snaps, and game snaps away from our younger players, who I think are, like I don't want him in there ahead of Dortch or Wilson. I don't want him, I prefer to play Xavier Weaver over Zay Jones now. I mean, I just let him go at this point. I mean, it's too bad that this guy, apparently the Cardinals knew about the incident. Of course, everybody kind of did. And he was, they dropped the case legally, but the NFL did their own investigation, which they typically do, and they were not satisfied with what they learned. I know there was a lot of physical evidence of a of on Zay Jones's ex-wife. That was reported. She had visible scrapes and bruises. So that's pretty hard to look at and say, well, that's she slipped and fell. No, probably not. So the NFL, I trust that they did the right thing. And Zay Jones is a fine player. Don't get me wrong. He's coming off an injury. He did show up and was a leader apparently, and was playing pretty well. So I give him all that credit. But I think we'll see where we are in 5 weeks and see what the room is looking like. But I like these young guys on the practice squad. I mean, Chisena captured my imagination, and I still don't know what happened. I mean, he's lights out in first game, and he had such a great chemistry. So you talk about throwing over the middle. I mean, with Clayton Tune, people underestimate this. What he put on in that first game with Chisena was a clinic. I mean, that 4th and 4 where he stuck it on Chisena on the skinny post that went for like 9 yards. That was textbook. Chisena has some length. He's got 4.3 speed. I mean, he's a blazer, and he's a great special teams player. I don't know if they were hiding him, but they ghosted him the rest of preseason after the first game. I kept wondering, why aren't they playing him? In the second preseason game, he played 2 snaps on special teams. So he wasn't so hurt that, he couldn't have played there, I don't think. Or maybe he got hurt in that second game. But that was a mystery. And I was so relieved and excited to see that he signed to the practice squad, because I thought he was going to get claimed. You know that, Kyle, from last week. I really thought, but I also last week didn't realize he wouldn't play again against Denver. And he just only played 1 game and basically was the second half of the first game. So yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about the depth of this group, and Bisaccia had a good preseason, and he's well liked, and he does great things in the practice squad. I mean, in the scout team, for playing Tyler Lockett, for playing Tutu Atwell, for playing, the Niners have Jacob Cowing now. They drafted as a rookie. That kid's a fast slot. Brandon Ayuk just got re-signed for 30 a year. So there are guys to cover and to play in practice that are valuable, and Bisaccia with his speed and shiftiness, gets it done there. Plus, I think Kyler really likes him. He's a well-liked teammate. So people were writing on Twitter, I don't get the Cardinals' obsession with Andre Bisaccia. I do. I mean, he's an ideal practice squad player, and you can bring him up in a pinch, and he'll produce. He had a good preseason. He caught everything his way, and he had about 7 or 8 catches, I think. He gets open, that kid, and his hands have improved. He's improved a lot. So, all right, let's move on to the offensive line. What was interesting to me here, I had Marquise Hayes making it over Gaines. I had the exact same group. And I just thought Marquise Hayes was lights out this camp. He looks tremendous. And I love Gaines, but I thought Gaines, because of his injury history, of last year would slip through waivers. I wasn't worried about him getting claimed. I didn't want to give up on Gaines at all, but I thought we could get him in the practice squad. Instead, he's on the roster. Marquise got through waivers, which I'm really delighted. I thought he might get claimed. He didn't. Love Keith Ishmael as a backup center. To Tristan Colon, I think is so versatile. I think on game days, the three guys you're going to see are Tristan Colon, who can play left guard, center, right tackle. You're going to see, of course, Kelvin Beachum. And then I think they're going to bring Isaiah Adams in on game days and play him on special teams and give him, like the way the coaches did last year, any chance they get to put him in the game at left guard, I think they'll do. And maybe in running situations, they put him in the game.
Yeah, I
So I
was
think
about to
those
say, I
three
think
guys,
running downs particularly because what I've seen, I was
yeah,
a bit concerned from the first preseason game for what I saw, but you look back on the tape and he is a mauler in the run game.
he is. And the rest will come in time, and be interested to see this year just how much playing time he gets. But I think that knowing the way they coach these guys, every chance they get, they're going to try to get him in there, and maybe with Gaines on games that he's active. Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how this starting line is going to look. I'm a little nervous to tell you the truth. I'm not a fan of sitting offensive lines for the duration of training of preseason games. I think that the coordination and chemistry of offensive lines only happens under game type situations where you really have to communicate and play well as a unit. So I'm a little nervous about what we're going to see early, but I'm praying and hoping that they come out there, looking really tight. Got to be honest, they got hammered in Indy, and that's red flag to the point where I said they got to play him against Denver, and they didn't. These guys got, you know, I mean, they got Bucknered up the middle and just totally outmanned off the edges. With the rookie Latu Letu was having a clinic. This makes me nervous. I mean, to be perfectly frank, what makes me nervous too is that they don't look at the second and third teams don't look as well coached as they were last year. The fundamentals don't seem as tight. The communication doesn't seem as tight. It's kind of more sort of chaos and disorder than I saw from last year. I mean, I was encouraged by the second team and third teams last year. This year, I was just like, what are they doing? I mean, typically it was just one guy breaking down, but on simple twist stunts inside, they were getting beat left and right. That's the kind of you got to switch it, you got to hedge it and switch it like a pick and roll in basketball. They weren't doing that. The fundamentals, I mean, Wilkinson's fundamental at tackle was just so swinging gate. I just couldn't understand how a veteran of that many years could be so clueless about pass pro. I mean, and just getting beat right off the snap. And that kind of ruined two first quarters of the first three games. Was guys just blowing past him right into the quarterback's face. So, and he landed with the Falcons in their practice squad. So I wish him well. He's a pretty decent guard, but tackles just doesn't seem to be his thing. No matter how hard the Cardinals tried, it just wasn't working. And I thought they'd do more about in the waivers. I thought they were going to claim a tackle. That surprised me because besides Beachum, we don't have. But they did sign on the practice squad the kid Tenuta. the tackle who might even be a swing tackle. So Luke Tenuta. So hopefully, but here's the thing. Let me retract that. I mean, Jackson Barton, I had on my roster, right up there wanting to put on the roster. He was the one really good tackle of the preseason. And for whatever reason, they're still throwing Wilkinson out there and everything else. I thought Jackson Barton made a really good roster case. And if you go and look at the PFF grades for preseason, he's right in the top 5 of the highest grades on the entire team. He's like in the 70s. And why they were just, playing other guys in front of him is a mystery to me. I know he's a guy that Clayton Adams has liked a long time. And he's been around a while. And they have a really solid coach-player relationship. So he's a guy I'm so glad we were able to bring back. But we'll see what happens Sunday of next week. Any thoughts from you guys on this offensive line?
I think you touched on something which is what I remember mentioning before. Was I was quite surprised by John Gaines, and I thought that he would have been right there on the bubble to make this team purely because of losing his rookie year. But I know they are big fans of Tristan Colon, just because of his versatility. I know that the coaching staff do really like him. But I mean, it's pretty much as expected. I just think, yeah, the John Gaines is probably the surprise one for me there. Obviously, Christian Jones, the other rookie tackle, I think he's still got a bit of developing to do, but obviously he's landed himself on the IR now as well. Anyway, so obviously it just did free up that spot. But again, John Gaines has that versatility. He can play, guard or center as well. Speaking of centre, just want a nice shout out for my boy Yelda Froholt for the contract extension. So
Yes.
I know we're both big fans of him. You're the first person that I tweeted about that when I saw it, Walter, because I know
Yeah.
that we're both big fans of Yelda. So yeah, glad to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Fear the Fro, man. He is
The Desert Viking.
after it. Oh my God. So
Yeah. I
really
think
excited.
I think Will Hernandez is due for another contract extension now because the mustache is going to
100%. I'm expecting that mustache is going to add so much talent to Will Hernandez that he's already got. It's going to bring him to another level this year just for the facial hair alone.
Yeah, and he can load up on mustache wax with the next salary he gets.
Yeah.
It's going to be
The only other thing I thought about is that I'm pissed because Walter, last week you and I spent like 20 minutes debating the Christian Jones spot on the roster, and then it didn't
right,
matter anyways because he had to go to
right,
IR. So it's just
right.
that was the biggest debate we had about the roster, and it didn't even matter at the end of the day.
I think what we learned is Christian Jones is just fine at right tackle. I just don't think at this point in his career you can
He needs work.
flip him over as a swing, but he'll learn. He'll keep growing. He's a great kid and has a wonderful work ethic, and he's a pretty dang good right tackle. I mean, they threw a lot at him early. That's the other thing I just don't think is wise. Is you take a young player fresh out of college who you're really high on, who's played right tackle, and has played well at right tackle, and now you're asking him to be, playing left tackle in preseason games. I just, I think it's too much to ask. I mean, how about letting a guy settle in where he's natural, and then when you have to, like a year later, check it out, but not in the beginning. So, but this is a guy who potentially could be our right tackle of the future. I mean, he's got the size. He's got, Brick Coleman said it perfectly. He said, you look at him and you think at times like, he's not the most fluid guy, or he's not, he said, but then at the end of the day, you look at what he's done. No, sacks, and he just gets it done. And he's such a fierce competitor. So I'm high on that. And I'm glad, Kyle, that he'll have a chance to come back. It's not season ending. He could be back in 4 weeks. He got rolled on, and fortunately, he's not severely hurt. As sometimes getting rolled on in that situation, uh, you know, occurs. So, let's switch over to the defense. Um, boy, I don't know if you saw Roy Lopez talking to the media yesterday.
I did.
Uh, what a just guy who loves football and so grateful to the coaches. And you know, what a bounce and in his performance from last year to this. They are really sky high on him now. He's been playing outstanding football. So happy they kept Kairis Tonga. Um, Kyle and I had predicted that, and um, you know, I thought he showed up pretty well physically. What do you think of those two guys, Kev?
I'm actually really high on Roy Lopez.
Yeah,
I think he's, from what I've seen, he is a player who's getting better and better. And it's also obviously seeing him with the media last night. He is the epitome of a JG guy. Like,
right.
so I can see why that again the staff are so high on him.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm really pleased. And again, Kairos Tonga as well. I think he's probably a bit more of a developmental type player, but I think the flashes that we've seen from him, I think there's also a promising player there as
right.
well. So yeah,
Yeah,
both sort of those guys, yeah, really happy to bring over to the roster. I'm really excited to sort of especially see what Roy Lopez can bring to this front.
yeah. Lopez is going to need to be re-signed. He's, I think, a free agent next year. Tonga, they have under control for another year, which is great. So I think this is his third NFL season. So that's really great. Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols, really excited to see those guys play. I mean, haven't had a chance to yet. Stills, I love. Collier played pretty well, and he was in there. It's weird to me that they're having him at nose tackle. Um, but maybe there's just like with Christian Jones, put him all over the place just to see how versatile he is. Um, you know, that's an interesting group. But I don't other Stills. I'm really excited about, um, and you know, I'm wondering just how much these guys will make a difference in stopping the run and rushing the passer. Both Jones and Nichols have some sneaky upside there, and Collier as well. So, but Stills, I think, is the alpha rusher and pass rusher in there. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if he was a bit of a surprise for us last year. Pretty easy for us to say. I thought he played
Yeah,
brilliantly, considering he was a late round selection. But I do probably consider him more of that sort of interior pass rush. But again, really excited to see it. And like I said, I think that group there is a lot better than last year. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, excited to sort of see what they can do, especially against the run.
right. Kyle, your thought?
Yeah, not much surprise here. This was the group that you and I both thought would make it, minus Darius Robinson having to go to injured reserve and
Yeah,
LJ Collier sliding in on the back end of the roster. So, yeah, I think that they're going to be a solid unit. I'm excited to see what Lopez and Tonga do in the middle. And obviously, Jones and Nichols have not played an official snap of Cardinals football. So it's going to be exciting to see how that all pieces together. I assume whenever Robinson's ready, he'll slide into the Collier spot. Collier will be either waived or exposed to the practice squad. And
right.
that's probably the game plan for them. Not too many surprises with the unit. It's just a lot of unknown because it's rookies and second year players and free agents that are making up a lot of the group.
Yeah, I had in my 53, I had Ben Still ahead of Collier. I had Collier as one of the first guys out. I just thought with you know I think Ben Still is under the radar. You know, what I loved about Still was like he had 5 tackles the first 2 games. All 5 of them were stops. Um, like a stop in the NFL is a tackle that stops a drive, and I thought that was really big of him. He's a good tackler. He's a strong kid. I like him a lot. I was so happy he passed through waivers. I thought there was an outside chance somebody would know about him and take him because he's he's strong at the point of attack. He's long, and he fits the mold as a 34 D end. He really does. That's a perfect role for him. He reminds me of maybe not as much an athletic athlete as Zach Allen, but some of the same sort of playmaking abilities he has. Shedding blocks and getting to and the sure tackling. Love to see that. They picked up PJ Mustafer off waiver or signed to the practice squad. Penn State kid, I remember him from there. Rugged kid inside. I'm not sure he's much of a pass rusher. I don't think he is, but as a run stopper, I think he's pretty good. So, it's going to be fascinating to watch these new guys, the two guys they plugged in, guys who've known each other a long time and have been friends, Justin Jones and Bilal Nichols. And, there's reason to be more optimistic and excited up front for us this year. So, and then getting Darius Robinson back, just as you guys are saying, is just thrilling to think about down the road. So on the edge, Dennis Gardeck, Zaven Collins, big year for him. We'll be interested to see if we've seen an uptick in his ability to rush the edge. Xavier Thomas, who was I think most explosive player on defense, he and Owen Popo in the preseason. Jesse Lucchetta, who's great special teams, really played good football on that edge. Brushed the passer better than I thought he would. Got close a couple times. Victor Dimukeje got to the passer twice and whiffed. That was kind of weird. Almost looked staged. Like practice, you do that because you can't hit a quarterback. Dimukeje is kind of an enigma to me. What's your take on him, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm the same. I just think, I mean, ultimately that edge group isn't enlightening by any means. I don't think it's quite concerning, but I think there's been flashes from Dimukeje, like they really have. Like I think he's as strong as an ox, like that's evident, But it's just the finishing, like, and if he could finish his tackles, I think he would notch up a couple of sacks a year. But just to see him miss those opportunities multiple times was a bit annoying.
Yeah,
But
yeah, and Cameron Thomas wasn't missing. He was finishing. So I look at that and I just say, what? But Victor Dimukeje has been around the block. The coaches, seem to like him a lot. Maybe he got off to a fast start last year. He had 4 sacks going about mid-season and then hit a wall, which most everyone else did. So didn't see much from him after that.
Yeah, and that's why last week when we were doing the roster cut, I ended up cutting Dimukeje, but he was the hardest of the group that I had to get rid of because compared to Lucchetta and compared to Cameron Thomas, Dimukeje has had the most production in actual NFL games up to this point in his career. And
Right.
those are players that I normally tend to look at and say, you've shown evidence that you can play in limited snaps for all of these guys. It's not like all of them have gotten consistent run to really get into a groove, but as kind of a plug and play person, which is what Lucchetta and Dimukeje and theoretically Cameron Thomas were all going to be. I was excited about Dimukeje making the roster because he's proven in plug and play scenarios to be the most effective of the group. That doesn't mean it'll carry over to this year. It was just someone that when I did have to cut him, I knew I had to, but it was tough to get rid of him. So I'm excited that he is still on the active roster for now.
All right. Yep. So And then inside, four really fine linebackers in White, Kaiser White, Mac Wilson, Senior. Can't wait to watch him. He's got some edge flexibility too. Owen Popo, who played fantastic. The lights have come on for him. Yeah, I thought he was really good down the stretch last year, last few games when he got his chance to play. And then Chris Barnes, who they did a technical thing with, um, they waived him, figuring he wouldn't get claimed. They were right. We'll talk about that at the end about what they were right about, so that they could keep Elijah Jones on the main roster for 2 days, and that's when you can then um, put another player on IR, and now he still has a chance to come back. But that's the way the NFL rules are. Because the Cardinals had already had their two, you can't do three, so they maneuvered these moves to be able to bring Chris Barnes back to the regular roster and to put Elijah Jones on the IR, and he's eligible to come back after 4 weeks. So, bravo, great move. What's your sense, Kevin?
I think there was a bit of a sigh of relief when, because I think Chris Barnes was arguably probably the biggest surprise cut from this team. So it's obviously to see him back is a relief. But looking at this group again, I completely agree. I think Owen Papo was fantastic, and I think he's really sort of stepped it up. But Mac Wilson, to me, I do wonder if they kind of see him as that sort of hybrid, you
Right.
know, as an edge as well, seeing obviously what he's been able to do off the edge as well.
Right.
But I'm excited. I think to see, you know, Kaiser White and Mac Wilson as a pairing, I think that's quite an exciting sort of middle of the park type of duo. So I think that's a really good group, especially Owen Papo. His flexibility to play special teams as well is a massive factor for him making this roster. But yeah, I think that's a massive upgrade this year, and I think that's a really good team. I think of never thought I'd say that with our you know PTSD from drafting linebackers, but I think that is a really good solid group. I really liked what I saw from Kaiser White last year before he went down injured. So to see him back and with Mac Wilson is going to be exciting.
Yeah, White's got a motor. He was what I worried about was he was, hot and cold. Great game, not so great. Really good game, not so great. The NFC West games he struggled in. That was worrisome to me. Also, at his size, I wonder if he can physically endure it, Mike, throughout an entire season. But he's got the want to, and he's, when he's a downhill and playing fast, and he can cover. I mean, in Philly, he was really good at that weak outside linebacker position. I think that's his niche. I don't think he's a Mike, but JG seemed, and Nick Rallis seem to believe he is. So we'll see if it's better this year, if he can hold up and be more consistent. But the way Papo's playing, you want to get your best 11 on the field. I think Kevin said it well. I think we're going to see times when Papo's in there and they're flexing Wilson out to the edge. And that'll be exciting. Wilson had 3.5 sacks for the Patriots last year. He rushed the edge better than anyone would have imagined. So we got that extra option when they want. And Barnes, of the four guys here, Barnes is the classic Mike. I mean, he physically fits the profile. Of course, Saban too, if they ever wanted to bring him back. But interestingly too, and I'll just remind those of you who saw Brett Coleman here. He said the one team we have no chance with is the Rams. And he said because of our inside linebackers, the Rams will take care of them. And the implication there being we need bigger, stronger guys inside versus the Rams to defend them. And I think there's credence to that, and there's something to be concerned about. But who knows? Especially being stronger up front. With our three up front, we might keep the linebackers cleaner this year, which would be great. So we'll see. Let's move on to the cornerbacks and safeties. Hip hip hooray, hallelujah! They kept them all. I had them all, just in this way, and was hoping for them all, and they got it done. I am so impressed. I mean, Darren Hall deserved to make this football team.
As did Starling Thomas.
Exactly. I mean, Starling Thomas may even, he may even start next week. So Melton and Garrett Williams 2 years in a row has been a ghost during preseason. I don't know, the coaches love him, but I haven't seen a lot of him. Catrell Clark, I thought, had a solid preseason. Had that punch fumble. He's Johnny's on the spot around the ball. Sean Murphy Bunting played pretty well in the Colts scrimmage. Other than that, we really got toasted by their wide receivers. So it's been an early struggle for Max Melton and Elijah Jones, but they've got the talent, and it's going to maybe take some time. But to been able to keep Elijah Jones and not cut him, I was so worried about that. That would have been stupid to cut him, right, Kyle? We were talking about that last week. I mean, how do you
Yes.
cut a third round pick? And they avoided that. And then Joey Blount is a turnover waiting to happen every time he steps on a football field. There's something really special about this kid, and he's one of our top 2 or 3 special teamers. To me, he should have been a lock, and it looks like he was a lock. And then Dadrion, the rabbit, what a preseason. We're going to see a lot of 3 safety looks with Buddha, Jalen, and the rabbit. Really excited about that. Kevin, you want to expound on that?
Yeah, I loved what I saw from Rabbit. I think to get that sort of, I think we touched on this before, but I think one thing that was we were missing probably last year was like ball hawks. We weren't
Yes.
getting the turnovers enough, and obviously he
Yes.
had this reputation of always being around the ball, and then suddenly comes away with an interception. That's not a coincidence, That's and yeah, I really liked what I saw from him. I completely agree. I think we're going to see a lot of these 3 safety looks, and yeah, I can't wait to see what he's going to bring, because he was exciting. And
Just one thing to point out, which is really something the Cardinals have to improve, is like you said it. We got to get our hands on more footballs. And I went back and looked at the stats for the preseason. This is pretty alarming. Other than Starling Thomas with 1 pass breakup, all of our cornerbacks had 0 interceptions and 0 pass breakups.
when was this? Sorry,
Games. In 3 games.
Oh, in 3 games. Okay.
So the entire preseason.
Oh, yeah.
If you could go down, I mean, Bunting and Williams didn't play, but Catrell Clark, 0 interceptions, 0 pass breakups. Max Melton, 0 interceptions, 0 pass breakups. Starling Thomas, 0 interceptions, but 1 pass breakup, which was a really good one. Elijah Jones, 0 interceptions, 0 pass breakups. And I'm watching their fundamentals on cover, and I'm concerned. They're not, in my opinion, being taught properly, and they're not aggressive enough. I cannot, for the life of me, understand how you roll a corner up to play press, and then you don't press him. I mean, he's right there. Try to knock him on his ass. I mean, that's the whole point. You're trying to knock a guy off his route and disrupt the timing. Instead, they play straight up where they're giving away inside leverage, and then they get beat inside. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I mean, JG's a defensive back coach originally. I mean, I don't know what's going on, but these guys don't look well coached. And they're not around the ball enough. So I'm getting a little worried about this. And from what we saw last year, I went back and traced that for interceptions and pass breakups. Again, it was like almost nothing. I mean, from the cornerbacks, and we're not getting our hands on balls. Uh, Hubie Brown, the great NBA basketball coach, started a stat in the NBA called touches for defense as a barometer for pressure. Like the more times on defense you get your hands on the ball, the better the pressure as a gauge. And it's so right. If you want to see the good teams that, secondaries, is you look at their interceptions, you look at their pass breakups, and the more touches they get on those, the better. Now, the good news for the Cardinals this preseason was that we're right up there with all the other teams in pressures and sacks. Believe it or not. So it wasn't like, quarterback had all day, all the time. Some of the plays he did, but a lot of the plays they were harassing him. I thought they got after Zach Wilson pretty well in that second half, for example. But somehow we're not getting to balls, and we're not, playing leverage well enough either. And then the whole look back for the ball when you're running on a go route, that needs to improve. So, but here's the thing, Kevin and Kyle, when you got a guy like Dadrion Taylor Demerson, who's got that instinct, and notice how he breaks on a ball. Oh my God, he's like rabbit on a carrot. I mean, he just, he busts it, but he also times it and he also baits it. This guy is savvy beyond his years. And, if we're struggling in the slot, he's going to play there. But we need him on the back end, like that interception he had. Awesome on the back end. That's what we need. And Kevin was alluding to that. Last year we got beat deep way too often. And that's the value of this kid is he can do both. So I think can Joey Blunt on the back end. I think he sealed the Eagles game with that interception. I think he can play center field some. So really excited about the additions we made, the youth of among the two, in the whole secondary. And I just think they're going to be fun to watch. I just hope that the coaches get them to play more aggressively and physically, and come up and press people and, play them harder than what we're doing. All right. So now, any further thoughts on this? Darren Hall, wow, what a instinctive player he is too. Went back. So Kyle, I won. I got your San Diego State player on a roster. I did it, but he got himself on the roster. What a great performance this preseason from him.
Yeah,
No one
absolutely.
deserved it more, And I went back and watched his San Diego State tape. The dude is, oh my God, he's got similar instincts to Dadrion Taylor Demerson. He truly does. He jumps routes. He plays leverage really well, and he's a baller. He comes up and sticks, as we saw. He was, I think, our leading tackler on the team in preseason with like double digits. So really excited that he's in there, and he's a hungry player. What do you think, Kev?
Yeah, I think I really like what we saw from him, and again, all the tape from practice and obviously the joint practices we had. So again, I think it's a nice surprise.
Yep.
But I think it's more than that spot. I think it was he showed flashes, and like you said, this for me massively is like I mentioned before, is just want to get these guys getting these interceptions, and I think he definitely adds that sort of that element into this group.
Yep, definitely. So, and he can play cornerback. I like him as a boundary corner. He's at San Diego State. He excelled at that. So San Diego State, Kyle, they're
We
here to stay.
we got one of our two. We got one of our two to stick around, which if it were going to be one of the two, this is the one I'm excited is sticking around. I thought he was going to have to go to the practice squad originally, and like you said, he's going to be a plug and play option in very specific scenarios, I would imagine, to start the season, especially in scenarios where, like you've been talking about for a few weeks, where Taylor Demerson is potentially playing some slot corner at the same time. I think Hall can slide in some of these situations as a safety in certain spots, and I'm interested to see how they mix and match it together because there's a lot of young corners, and I don't quite know how they're going to mix it all together or how they're going to piece the cornerback room together. I have a feeling it's going to be Murphy Bunting and Williams as the boundary corners, but the rest of the group, I don't really know how they're going to piece it together or who's going to be playing the slot. They have options at least. It's not like it was
Yeah,
before where there weren't anyone to play the slot. And obviously, sometimes you want multiple people who can play the
correct.
slot on the field, but I don't know exactly where this is going to go. I'm not losing faith. I'm just a little disappointed we haven't seen Max Melton jump off the screen so
Right,
far, given how high they picked him in the draft and
right.
how he's the I going is he the highest draft pick they've had at the cornerback position since Patrick Peterson? I think that
Well,
might be true.
it's Byron Murphy was 33.
Okay, so Murphy was ahead of Melton. I knew they were both second rounders.
So
I just couldn't
and
remember who
Melton was
was up
44.
there.
So but close enough, like 43. So ten picks apart.
Yeah, so
Um, yeah,
hopefully he takes that slot corner position and runs with it, but I, I still like Starling Thomas and Keitrell Clark. Honestly, with the quarterback room, it's the same thing that I sound like a broken record with over the last couple of years. But in 2022, the last year of Kingsbury and Vance Joseph, they had the 32nd ranked cornerback room in the league. And
right,
sometimes when it's that strugglesome, you just got to replace the people, not necessarily the scheme or anything like that. Sometimes just
right,
getting new people in there will improve it. Look at what happened with the Ravens wide receiver room. It's not
right.
great, but it's not as bad as it was a couple of years ago. And I think that's kind of where the Cardinals are at, is that you've got Murphy Bunting, free agent, Garrett Williams, 2023 draft class, Keitrell, 2023 draft class, Starling Thomas, 2023, Melton, rookie, Elijah Jones, rookie, uh, obviously Taylor Demerson, 2024 rookie class, Joey Blunt's, I think, 2022, but he's only been on the team since 2023. So I just
Yeah,
think it's good to rotate the people in and out, and you'll get just a different vibe going on in the room.
definitely.
Absolutely. So this is where I was sort of chiming with the stat that I saw and I loved from guy Luke Lipinski on Twitter. It said the Cardinals have 30 new players on their 53-man roster compared to the one they had cut down 1 year ago. So that's a
Right,
57% overhaul on this roster.
right,
So if we're luring to the fact that this is a rebuilding team, those are the steps that you need to make. You know, having the bottom of the ladder cornerback room, it's going to take these, you know, two or three draft classes to get that back up to where they want to go. And obviously, we have invested quite heavily in that in the corner room with the draft picks that the Monty's made over the last 2 years. So hopefully, we won't be at that bottom of the ladder anymore.
that's it. So our specialists were as predicted. Um, Waving Joe Shimko, the long snapper, who I thought was outstanding. And I think could be the long snapper of the future if he's still around next year, if Aaron Brewer retires. But those three have been, thick as thieves, and having them back gives us great stability in that area. Your thoughts, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I did think that Joe Shimiko was going to win this battle here,
Yeah,
but I completely agree. I mean, there's stability there, and you know when you've got your three specialists who are arguably some of the most important players on the field to get you that extra point or that extra three.
right,
Then if you've got a stable there, why upset that? So
right.
Yeah, I really like him what I'm seeing from Blake Gillikin as well. So, if he
Me
can
too.
continue his form from last season, I think we've got a really, really solid punter there who's probably
Yeah,
a bit underappreciated. So, obviously
yeah,
Matt Prater, and then Aaron Brewer again, long snapper who's been around for as long as I can remember, really, with this Cardinals team.
right. So one more shout out to some of the players who we haven't talked about yet on the practice squad. Marcus Bailey, the linebacker, one really good special teamer. They can jump him up for special teams any week from the practice squad and move him back if they have to. But I was really glad they were able to hold on to him. He's an athletic kid and he was making some plays. I was impressed. Um, Tejon Palmer, so glad to have him pass through waivers. He's a big kid. He needs a year in the system, but watch out because he's got skills and he's got size and he has speed. Chisena, absolutely love. It'll be fascinating to see how, whether he gets some playing time this year. The fact that the Cardinals were able to hold on to him is really encouraging because the Ravens claimed him last year after for the playoffs after our season ended. And he played well for the Ravens on special teams. But it appears like Dan Chisena likes it here in Arizona, and I think he's an ascending player. The dude, he's like a 4.29. The kid can absolutely fly. That's why he's a great gunner on special teams. I'm just really fascinated with him. But for whatever reason, even at Penn State, he never broke out. Had that breakout season, and who knows? Maybe we got if he can break out, maybe we've got a real diamond in the rough there with him too. So, and then Julian Okwara, like the tape on him as a long edge and um, very aggressive. Uh, I think he's a kid who could, in short order, be on this roster. Devad Wilson, I've always liked. He had a solid preseason. Jaden Davis, I really, really love this kid. He was a step off a lot of his covers, but he was really close, and he made some really good tackles, and he made one great play in the end zone where he didn't allow a catch, and he was right there, sticky on a end zone throw. So, as a seventh round draft pick, I was kind of curious why they drafted all these corners, but you can see why. This kid's got some game to him. So, Jordan Murray, the tight end from the Colts, they must have liked what they saw from him in the joint practices, adding him in there. Blake Whiteheart got uh, signed to the where was it? Browns. Someone in the Midwest picked him up because I thought, oh wow, he's back home, nearly back home in Wisconsin. Um, so and he had a pretty good preseason for us for 2 years in a row. But Jordan Murray's an interesting kid who played at Hawaii. He's got size, and I'll be interested to see what he looks like when we get the chance. Overall, your impression of the practice squad, Kevin?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few familiar faces in there. But there are a couple of players there that I think really do have the opportunity at some point this season to step into this first team and perform. Obviously Michael Carter being the obvious one, but like you mentioned earlier, I really liked what I saw from Big Mo, Marquise Hayes. And then yeah, I'm also quite a fan of Ben Still as well. But I'm interested to see what they're going to be doing with Julian Aquara as well. So I definitely feel like in his years in Detroit, I think he was in Detroit for 4 years. He had 9 sacks, I think it was. I definitely
Right.
feel like this system suits him a lot better. So they must have seen something they like from him, and maybe that is sort of an option they're looking at to sort of bolster that edge room. So again, it's good to see some rookies here in this practice squad again as well, rather than just being straight up cut. So Tejuan Palmer and Jaden Davis as well, the corner out of Miami. Yeah, I think it's a good start. It's you can see the depth that is slowly building in this roster. We're still lacking something, I would say, but it's starting to get there. So,
Right.
yeah, I think it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Kyle?
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know exactly how the timeline works out, but I'm guessing that Julian Okora might have been a Dave Sears pick back in
Yeah,
Detroit, and so
exactly.
maybe there's that connection
Yeah.
there, or someone who had scouted him prior. The practice squad is, I think, I think you're going to see about 6 of these people on the active roster in short order. I don't know exactly who's going to be injured or what like that, but Carter, I would expect we'll see at some point. Hayes, I would expect we see at some point. Jackson Barton, we might see at some point. Your guy Ben Steele, we might see at some point. Maybe
Right.
Julian Aquara. I think there's a good, obviously Ritter for the emergency third quarterback situation, but
Right.
I think, but not necessarily September, but by October, I think we'll see about 6 of those players called up to the active roster. And yeah, I think that I'm glad that all the players that we have here ended up making it through, because
Yeah.
specifically Ritter, Carter, Chisena, Hayes, Steele, those are guys that were like debated for the active roster, and usually those are
Right.
people that are sometimes susceptible to being claimed. So I'm
Yep.
like where things stand right now on the practice squad.
Yeah, me too. We got everyone I was hoping to get back, except for Trevor Nowaski, who got claimed back by the Lions. He was the one. It's a work of art. It's to be able to make cuts and not have anyone claim. The Cardinals almost got that, but Nowaski was grabbed up by the Lions, who returned the favor because the Cardinals had claimed him when they put him on waivers last November. And I know that Lions fans were upset because they really liked that kid. I thought he played really well on special teams, and as a linebacker, um, he showed range and he covered well. I didn't see him in the downhill mode, down down in fill mode as much as I would have liked, but he's got a future there perhaps as well. I was talking to some Lions fans who seem to think that. So, but one got away, one was traded. So other than that, out of 70 players to have my 68 favorites still in the mix, I'm really really happy of that. And I want to give a shout out to our international player Bernard Sakovits, um, and who got the exemption still. I thought he played well this preseason. He's making progress. The kid's like, a Euro baby Gronk waiting to happen. So I'm glad he's still there. He's got a great attitude. He's working on his game. He made some good catches, good blocks. He's a legit, if you need him in that 13 personnel, 12 and 13. I think he can do it. I think he's developed well enough to be able to be counted on. So, and now I want to ask Kevin to do some recruiting for us in England. To
I'll tap
find
into
us,
the Hertfordshire University Hurricanes to see if there's any players who are ready for the
we want to
Cardinals roster.
have you focus on edge rushers from England. Now, I think putting you to use in that capacity will be fantastic because
Overseas
we're
scouting department.
yeah, that's right. See what Kevin isn't telling you. That's where he's been for a couple of months.
Yeah.
He's on the hunt. All right, it's all secret agent style, but he's been out there. Um, yeah, so I'm just delighted that we were able to retain as many of the I thought best players we had going, and so I mean I give Monty an A minus all the way around for what he was able to accomplish roster wise with being able to keep the guys who played best for us either on the 53 man or on the practice squad, which right now, as the coaches are rightfully saying, all the position competitions are still there. And at any week, anyone can come up from the practice squad We've got some depth there. The question is, the biggest question in my mind is, can you actually rest your starters an entire preseason and then come out and look like you're clicking on all cylinders or most of the cylinders? What do you think, Kev?
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of resting everyone. I'd like to at least see some reps in. I mean, the Chiefs did it, and they're back-to-back Super Bowl champions.
Right.
It's and I get why they're trying to do it. I guess they're trying to sort of hold back a full display of what our first team would look like. I guess, but I'm not a fan of the whole holding back on preseason where you could get those, like you said, those valuable reps, especially for a brand new front, like a brand new O line. So I'm just hoping that we come out the gates running really, and that we're not
Yeah.
just going to be just a quick spark and that's it. I hope that we see something week one and the guys hit the ground running. So we'll have to
Yeah.
wait and see.
Well, lucky for you, it's an early game
It
of the
is.
first game, so you won't be up half the night. Let's see, it would be 6 o'clock your time, right?
Yeah, correct. So we usually have games at sort of 5, 6 o'clock, and then the second set of games is around 8 o'clock, and then the
Yeah.
late game is at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Well, you got to get Ruben in his Kyler Murray K1 shirt.
I'll have to get a new one. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to get a new one. And everyone in their Cardinal shirts at 6 o'clock at your house.
Absolutely.
Week from Sunday. Oh man, I'll be thinking of you during that game. So, hey man, thanks so much for joining us.
No, it's been a pleasure. Always is.
You're a breath of fresh air, and let's just say you have a command of the Queen's language,
Oh,
which for a
the King's language now.
yep. Oh, the King's. Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, the royal language. You know, I saw you perk up a little bit when I mentioned Dylan Thomas. So that was really, and there's nothing like the old British eloquence to, you've got all that in spades. So thanks so much for joining us, and
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for
uh,
having me.
let the fans know where they can contact you.
Yeah, sure. So you can reach me on Twitter, and it's at Uberkev. Or you can also reach me on listen to me on my podcast, which is available through Spotify, which is Let's Talk Cardinals. Hoping to get a brand new episode recorded in the next couple of days, in all honesty, because it's been a while. But I'm just glad to sort of be amongst the space again and be talking to all of our fellow Cardinals fans and like-minded people. So, yeah, thanks again for having me on. It's been great.
All right. And Kyle, parting shot from you.
Ready for Buffalo? Are we all ready for to go to Buffalo and sit in the freezing cold for the first week of the season? We all
At least it's
excited for
week
this?
one. At least it's week one. So
Yep.
I'm ready for a trip to
I'm ready.
Buffalo.
Let's go.
Yeah, on Lake Erie. So, boy, that's going to be an interesting game. So, yeah, we'll have plenty to talk about then. Really excited to have Kevin on today. His perspectives are astute, and we'd love to have him back. Probably after a few games to see where we are, and appreciate him giving us his time. Kyle, we have one San Diego State player left, so we compromised. Thank goodness. The hope and dream is still alive. Have yourself a good week. Enjoy the games, and thank you for all you do here, and to the fans here, to our listeners. We're doing great. You're really tuning in and focusing in on with us. I'm sure we don't always agree, but we hash it out somehow, and at the end of the day, we all want the same thing: to have the shower of Super Bowl confetti shower down on you into a red sea, red rain.